Hey Marie, welcome to Harry Christmas to You. These are book recommendations by house. I thought about all the different houses and some cool books that would be great for each one. Now, one of the things that I included was a nonfiction recommendation for each house. So I have 3 book recommendations, 2 of which are books that I think would fit really nicely with that house's reader. So if you're in Gryffindor, there are 2 books that I think would be great for Gryffindor because they fit in with the whole Gryffindor aesthetic. But the 3rd recommendation will be a book that's a little out of that house's wheelhouse. So if you're in House Slytherin, it may not be such a Slytherin-y book. For the record, I'm House Slytherin, but I also think I'm just as Ravenclaw as I am Slytherin, so it could easily go the other way. Let's get started. Gryffindor Dark Eden by Chris Beckett. It's an adventure story as well as a bit of a sociological story. Basically, you have a group of people who are on this Earth-like planet, only it's dark all the time. The light comes from the trees and from the vegetation, even if it's under the water, but it's like perpetual night. There is no sun. So that's why the cover looks the way it does. It's kind of the way the world looks. And essentially, people are on this planet. Their origin story is that their ancestors, Jilla, which we find out later her name is basically Angela, and someone else, I forgot the guy's name, they came from Earth and they came down from the skies and they were accidentally left, and someone else went back to get help. And they ended up staying there. They ended up having children together, and they always told their children, stay in this area because they will be back. Basically astronauts, but they don't see it that way. So they're always waiting in this certain part of the planet, just afraid to venture out because someday someone will be coming for them. It's been ages. So we see how a planet is populated, like the beginning of humanity on this planet. And we see how myth is born, how legends are created, as well as how communities develop and gender roles and all of that stuff. This is very cool. It's one of my favorite books of all time. One of the main characters is very impulsive. He's a big risk taker. So there's a lot of adventure in this book. Half a King by Joe Abercrombie. This is about a boy who becomes king unexpectedly. He's the 2nd son. He's trained to be a healer, kind of like a maester in Game of Thrones, similar to that. But then he has to take the throne because his brother, was it his brother? I think it was his brother, unexpectedly dies. It's called Half a King because he has a maimed hand in this society. Being maimed in any way makes you almost like less of a person because you're unable to fight and prove your manhood, etc. Really, really fast paced. This book is really slim. There's so much adventure packed into these pages. It's a page turner. There's really no fluff. There are many surprises throughout the book. Fantastic coming of age story. The 3rd recommendation is not only the nonfiction, but it also happens to be the out of your wheelhouse book, Subliminal, How Your Unconscious Mind Rules Your Behavior by Leonard Mlodinow. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. It's essentially about your subconscious mind and how much you pick up, how much your subconscious mind works. So some of the things that you think are your gut reactions are actually your subconsciousness working really quickly. So Gryffindors are very impulsive, etc. This kind of shows a little bit more how that mind works, where those rash decisions come from. So I thought this was a really good book for Gryffindors to understand a little bit more about themselves. Hufflepuff, Salt to the Sea by Ruta Sepetys. This is about one of the worst maritime disasters in history. We don't really learn a lot about this one. We learn a lot about the Titanic. Thousands of young people, of people of all ages, but lots of young people dying on a ship that was carrying refugees during World War II. This is the first book I ever read from Ruta Sepetys, and she became an auto-buy author for me based off of this book. This is told in multiple POV, and it's just so heart-wrenching, but not in a sappy way. The author just does such a great job of really putting you in these characters' shoes. You feel their fear, their hopes, their dreams, some of the things that you just know will never be realized. I think that's kind of why it feels so tragic. But don't think that this book is a downer because the book is still uplifting. You're going to feel something, but you're gonna like it. Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I really enjoyed this tale. It's about, well, I hesitate to tell you too much about it. Essentially, we're talking about, I'm not going to tell you that because I think they stopped putting it on the, I'm not going to tell you that. Okay, this is what I am going to tell you. Boarding school, young children who are raised to believe that they are very special, but they don't know why. They aren't allowed to leave, but they are encouraged to develop their creativity, their intelligence, keep themselves healthy. Then people leave the school, they go off somewhere else. I'm not going to tell you any more. It's pretty thin. It's a coming of age. It's very poignant. It was made into a movie. It's just very touching and very fitting for a Hufflepuff recommendation. full of heart. I don't want to tell you too much because I don't want to spoil it. This is best going in knowing as little as possible. So the third book, the Out of the Wheelhouse book, also happens to be a nonfiction, and that is The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. This is not a very Hufflepuff book, but listen, the world out there can be tough sometimes. You may not want to have any confrontation. This actually may help you prevent a lot of confrontation, actually. But it's important to kind of know the harsh realities of what's going out there. And I think it's very important that you read this book. Slytherins have all read this. This is like a mainstay in the Slytherin library. Actually, this is also a mainstay in the Ravenclaw library. And in case you're wondering, this is where we really ponder the question, is it better for a king or a prince, a sovereign, to be feared or loved? Very good read for Hufflepuffs. Ravenclaw. How the World is Made. The Story of Creation According to Sacred Geometry. This is by John Mitchell with Alan Brown. Essentially, we are breaking down the mathematical properties of sacred geometry, the geometry that shows up all throughout nature, and how ancient societies harnessed this knowledge. So we have sacred geometry and how it occurs in nature, as well as how it is shown. For instance, this picture here is Jerusalem. Cool illustration. This book is full of illustrations. Lots of symbolism in this book, as well as in the Book of Symbols. This book is by Taschen. Taschen makes a lot of those huge coffee table books. I'm trying to figure out who it's by. I think this is actually by the Archive for Research in Archetypal Symbolism. It's not any single person. But the editor-in-chief is Amy Ronberg and the editor is Kathleen Martin. So there's that. It's kind of like an index book and it comes with a nice handy bookmark. So it's all about symbolism. For the most part, these are the more well-known interpretations. This is probably a good book to introduce you to the rabbit hole, but if you want to go farther in, then you are going to have to extend your studies. But for Ravenclaws, there's nothing to that because life is all about exploration and learning and gathering knowledge. So this is a good introduction. And pretty much anything you can think of is in here. So for instance, hand. It'll show you different pictures of sculptures or ancient illustration of hands, as well as what hands have represented throughout time. Again, a very cool book, an introduction into the rabbit hole. So Ravenclaws are notorious for being very cerebral, so my third pick is actually a graphic novel called The Sculptor by Scott McCloud. Neil Gaiman blurbed this book. He said it's the best graphic novel I've read in years. This book is about an artist who is really struggling. He was actually kind of on his way, and then he had a bad run-in with someone really important and the guy basically blacklisted him, so he's really been struggling for years and he's thinking about giving up, and he meets someone who tells him that all of his dreams can come true. He can become the artist he's always wanted to become. He'll be huge, everyone will love his work, but he'll only have 1 year to live. No matter what, he's got that 1 year of achieving his dreams and then he's out of here. Of course, as you can see, he meets someone during this year, and then the deal seems a lot more complicated than it did at the beginning. A wonderful book, one of my favorites. I thought this would be a great recommendation for Ravenclaws to get out of their head a little bit and to just kind of lead with their heart. Slytherin. The Secret History of the World by Mark Booth. It's actually the secret history of the world as laid down by the secret societies. Now, like Ravenclaws, Slytherins love tradition and ancient knowledge, although it's less of knowledge for knowledge's sake and knowledge to gain power. This contains some of the more esoteric knowledge, the lesser known knowledge that I was talking about earlier, that is in the Book of Symbolism, but it doesn't kind of cover all of these things. This book is pretty straightforward. The Secret History of the World. Things that you don't necessarily learn in history class. Just give you a little piece of the flap jacket. Starting from a dangerous premise that everything we've been taught about our world's past is corrupted and that the stories put forward by the various cults and mystery schools throughout history are true. Booth produces nothing short of an alternate account of the past 3,000 years. Slytherin required reading. The Dumb House by John Burnside. Loved this book. This book is about a man who decides to create an experiment. Well, before we go that far, he wants to discover the original human language. The actual language we use to communicate if we were left completely to our own devices. He believes that the only way to discover this information is to leave us to our own devices, essentially finding some babies or children and then kind of spying on them to see what they'll say, to see how they communicate. Because he does recognize that they are able to communicate through various sounds. And so he wants to see how this language develops. And whatever language this would be the language that all human beings would speak, regardless of culture. So, without saying too much, let's just say he has no qualms about doing the things no one else would want to do to discover this information. He's very cunning, he's very ambitious, because of course it is a very ambitious goal, and he doesn't really have a problem with stepping over the line. I don't even think he thinks there is a line. There is no line. Right or wrong, good or evil, there's no line. Very disturbing but entertaining read. But sometimes you have to rein them in. So for Slytherins, I also recommend The Portrait of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I think this is very important. I would say for Slytherins, it's like a cautionary tale. One of my favorite books of all time. Dorian Gray, very young, he's very naive, very impressionable. He meets a few people who are able to expose him to different beliefs, and he travels down a road that leads him to a not so, well, I don't know. Was it a good place? He learned something. I think A Path to Ruin would probably be a good way of describing it. One of my favorite books of all time. So this is my out of the wheelhouse pick for Slytherin House. So those are my book recommendations by house. I hope you enjoyed the video. I also hope that you check out some of the books for your house. Let me know what you think in the comments below, or you can comment on my channel. I don't really know how it works, but you can do both. So here's to wishing you a very Merry Christmas to you and yours. I'm wishing you plenty of books and eggnog. Don't forget to like the video if you liked it. Please share the video. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, I'll see you guys later. Bye.